Lily Thompson stood near the boarding gate, clutching her ticket tightly in her hand. Her heart raced as she glanced at the clock on the wall. It was almost time for her flight to leave, and she couldn't afford to miss it. This trip wasn't just another journey. It was a chance to change her life. In New York, a big company waited to meet her for a job interview. If she got this position, it would be the start of something amazing. But first, she had to get on the plane. The airport buzzed around her, filled with the sounds of people talking, announcements over loudspeakers, and the hum of rolling suitcases. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry, moving from one place to another. Lily tried to stay calm, reminding herself that everything would work out if she could just focus. She took a deep breath and walked up to the desk where the flight attendant was checking tickets. The man behind the counter looked strict. His name tag said Roger, and he didn't smile when Lily approached him. He had short dark hair and sharp eyes that scanned every detail. Roger's uniform was perfectly pressed, making him look even more serious. He held himself like someone who followed rules without question, and Lily hoped he wouldn't give her any trouble. "Good afternoon," Lily said politely, offering her ticket. "Here's my boarding pass." Roger glanced down at the paper in her hand. His eyebrows furrowed slightly as he noticed the edges were bent and wrinkled. Without saying a word, he picked it up and turned it over in his hands, inspecting it closely. Then he shook his head. "This isn't valid," he said flatly. Lily blinked, caught off guard by his words. "What do you mean?" "I printed it myself from the email confirmation." "It should be fine." "It's damaged," Roger replied, pointing to the creases. "We can't accept tickets that aren't in good condition. You'll need to buy a new one or step aside so we can process other passengers." Her stomach sank. "But I don't have time for that. My flight leaves in 20 minutes and I have an important meeting in New York tomorrow morning. Can't you make an exception?" "No exceptions," Roger said firmly. His tone left no room for argument. Rules are rules. Lily felt a wave of frustration rising inside her. She clenched her fists but forced herself to stay composed. Arguing wouldn't help, but neither would giving up. "Look," she began, again trying to keep her voice steady. "I understand there are procedures, but this is ridiculous. The information on the ticket is still readable. Can't you check it manually or verify it through your system?" Roger crossed his arms and leaned back slightly, his posture rigid. "Ma'am, I've already explained the policy. If you want to board this flight, you'll need to follow the guidelines. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to join us today." Behind Lily, a line of passengers had started forming. Some of them shifted impatiently, glancing at their watches. Others whispered among themselves, clearly annoyed by the delay. A few even gave Lily disapproving looks, as if blaming her for holding things up. The pressure mounted, and she felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. This couldn't be happening, not now, not when everything depended on this trip. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice trembling. "I'll figure something out." She stepped away from the counter, feeling defeated. As she moved aside, Roger tore the ticket into pieces right in front of her, letting the scraps fall onto the desk. It was a small gesture, but it stung deeply. To him it might have been routine, but to Lily it felt personal. Once she was out of earshot, Lily pulled out her phone and dialed a familiar number. Her hand shook as she waited for the call to connect. On the third ring, a warm voice answered. "Hey there, sweetheart. What's going on?" It was her grandfather, Chuck Norris. Even though he lived far away in Texas, his presence always made her feel safe. Right now, she needed that comfort more than ever. "Grandpa," she began, struggling to hold back tears. "Something awful happened. I was about to board my flight to New York, but the flight attendant said my ticket was invalid because it was crumpled. He tore it up right in front of me and refused to let me on the plane." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Chuck spoke again, his voice was calm, but firm. "Tell me exactly what happened, Lily. Don't leave anything out." So, she did. She recounted every detail, the rude behavior, the lack of empathy, and how helpless she'd felt. By the time she finished, she was crying softly. Chuck listened patiently, his mind working quickly. When she was done, he sighed. "Don't worry, Lily," he said gently. "I'll take care of this. Nobody treats my granddaughter like that and gets away with it. Despite her sadness, Lily managed a weak smile. Her grandfather had always been protective of her, and hearing those words brought her a sense of relief. Still, she couldn't shake the unfairness of it all. Why hadn't Roger shown any compassion? Didn't he realize how much this trip meant to her? Back at the gate, Roger continued processing passengers, unaware of the storm brewing in the distance. To him, the incident with Lily was already forgotten, a minor inconvenience in a day full of routines. He bragged to his coworkers about how he'd handled the situation, boasting about his commitment to enforcing policies. They nodded along, impressed by his dedication, though some secretly thought he'd been too harsh. Meanwhile, Lily sat in a quiet corner of the terminal, scrolling through options on her phone. She tried booking another flight, but nothing was available until the next day. Panic set in as she realized she might miss her interview entirely. Just then, her phone buzzed with a text message from Chuck. "Be ready. I'm coming to fix this." Relief washed over her once more. Whatever happened next, she knew her grandfather wouldn't let her down. And as for Roger, he had no idea that his actions were about to bring him face to face with a legend. Chuck Norris arrived at the airport early the next morning. He had driven all night from his ranch in Texas, determined to set things right for Lily. Though he preferred a quiet life away from the spotlight, there were moments when stepping in was necessary, and this was one of them. As he walked through the bustling terminal, people stopped what they were doing to stare. Some recognized him immediately. Others just sensed that this man carried himself differently, radiating strength and wisdom. He made his way to the airline's customer service desk where Roger, the same flight attendant who had torn up Lily's ticket, was now working. Chuck approached calmly, his hands in his pockets, and waited until Roger noticed him. When their eyes met, Roger froze for a moment, clearly startled. Chuck gave him a small nod before speaking. "Good morning," Chuck said in a warm but firm voice. "I'd like to speak with your manager, please." Roger blinked rapidly, trying to compose himself. Sure. Let me see if she's available." His tone wavered slightly, betraying his unease. He picked up the phone and whispered into it, glancing nervously at Chuck every few seconds. Within minutes, a woman in a business suit appeared from behind a door nearby. She looked professional but approachable, her name tag reading Susan Carter, manager. "How may I assist you, sir?" Susan asked politely, shaking Chuck's hand. "My name is Chuck Norris," he began, noticing how both Susan and Roger reacted to his introduction. "Yesterday, my granddaughter, Lily Thompson, attempted to board a flight here. Unfortunately, she was denied boarding because her ticket was deemed invalid due to some minor damage. I'm here to discuss what happened and find a resolution." Susan nodded slowly, glancing at Roger. "I understand. Let's talk about this further. Please follow me." They moved to a private office nearby, leaving Roger standing awkwardly by the counter. Once inside, Susan gestured for Chuck to sit down across from her desk. She opened a folder and pulled out some papers, clearly preparing to address the issue professionally. "Mr. Norris," Susan started, "we take customer satisfaction very seriously. However, our policies are designed to ensure smooth operations. Tickets must be legible and undamaged for security reasons. That being said, I apologize if my staff handled the situation poorly." Chuck leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady but kind. "Ms. Carter, I appreciate your concern for safety and procedure, but sometimes rules need to bend a little when dealing with real people facing real challenges. My granddaughter wasn't trying to cause trouble. She simply needed to get to New York for an important opportunity. Couldn't someone have taken a moment to verify her information instead of tearing up her ticket?" Susan hesitated, realizing the weight of Chuck's words. "You're absolutely right. This shouldn't have happened. We'll make sure to review our processes and train our employees better moving forward." Chuck smiled faintly. "Thank you. Now, about Lily. I assume there's still a way to help her reach New York today?" Susan nodded quickly. "Absolutely. I'll arrange for her to be placed on the next available flight at no additional cost, and I'll personally oversee everything to ensure there are no further issues." "That's good to hear. Chuck replied. But there's something else I'd like to address. You see, enforcing rules is important, but so is treating people with respect. Sometimes a little compassion goes a long way. Susan agreed wholeheartedly, promising to relay this message to her team. After wrapping up the meeting, Chuck stepped back into the main area of the terminal. Roger spotted him immediately and approached hesitantly, his face pale. "Mr. Norris," Roger stammered. I didn't mean to cause any problems yesterday. I was just following protocol." Chuck raised a hand, cutting him off gently. "I know you were doing your job, son. But remember, rules exist to serve people, not the other way around. Next time, try putting yourself in the passenger's shoes. How would you feel if someone dismissed your concerns without listening?" Roger swallowed hard, nodding vigorously. "Yes, sir. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you for pointing it out." As Chuck turned to leave, he noticed several passengers watching the exchange with interest. One older woman even clapped softly, earning chuckles from those around her. Chuck tipped his hat politely before heading toward the exit. He had accomplished what he came for, but his work wasn't done yet. Later that afternoon, Chuck called Lily to update her on the situation. "The airline has arranged for you to fly out tonight," he told her. "They've also promised to improve how they handle situations like yours. Everything will be okay, sweetheart." Lily sighed in relief. "Thank you so much, Grandpa. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'd manage just fine," Chuck replied with a chuckle. "But I'm glad I could help. Now focus on your interview and show them what you're made of." Meanwhile, back at the airport, Roger couldn't stop thinking about his encounter with Chuck Norris. The experience left a deep impression on him. For years he had prided himself on being strict and efficient, believing that sticking to the rules was the best way to maintain order. But now, he wondered if he had been too rigid. Had he missed opportunities to connect with passengers and make their journeys smoother? That evening, after his shift ended, Roger sat alone in the break room reflecting on the day's events. He realized that while procedures mattered, they weren't everything. Treating people with kindness and understanding could transform not only their experiences but also his own perspective. Determined to change, he decided to start small, by apologizing to anyone he might have upset recently and learning to listen more carefully. Over the following days, Roger began implementing these changes. He greeted passengers warmly, offered assistance whenever possible, and took extra care to explain policies clearly. His co-workers noticed the difference and teased him good-naturedly about his newfound friendliness. To their surprise, Roger laughed along, admitting that meeting Chuck Norris had taught him a valuable lesson. Word of Chuck's visit spread throughout the airline company. Employees whispered about the legendary figure who had come to advocate for a passenger and ended up inspiring everyone around him. Managers took note of the positive impact his actions had on morale and customer relations. They decided to launch a new initiative called the Norris Standard, aimed at promoting empathy and respect across all levels of service. For Lily, the apology and resolution came just in time. That night, she boarded her flight to New York, feeling grateful for her grandfather's intervention. As the plane soared into the sky, she thought about the chain of events that had unfolded. What started as a frustrating ordeal had turned into a lesson in resilience and advocacy. She vowed to carry those lessons with her as she pursued her dreams. By the time Lily landed in New York, news of her story had reached the airline's headquarters. Executives praised Susan for handling the situation gracefully and encouraged her to share the experience during an upcoming training session. They hoped that by highlighting Chuck's example, they could foster a culture of compassion within the company. Back in Texas, Chuck returned to his peaceful life. Content knowing he had made a difference, he spent his days tending to his horses, practicing martial arts and enjoying quiet moments on his porch. Yet he remained aware of the ripple effects his actions had created. Every once in a while, he received letters or emails thanking him for inspiring others to be better versions of themselves. One such letter came from Roger himself. In it he wrote, "Dear Mr. Norris, I want to thank you for opening my eyes to a different way of serving others. Since our meeting, I've tried to Approach my work with more kindness and understanding. It hasn't always been easy, but seeing the smiles on passengers' faces makes it worth it. You truly embody the values we should all strive for. Thank you for reminding me of that." Chuck smiled as he read the note, tucking it away with other mementos. He knew that true strength lay not in dominance but in lifting others up. And though he preferred staying out of the limelight, he felt proud knowing his legacy lived on, in the hearts of those he touched and the lives he helped improve. The next morning, Chuck Norris returned to the airport, not because there was more to resolve, but because he wanted to make sure the message stuck. He believed that actions spoke louder than words, and he planned to show everyone exactly what the Norris standard meant. When he arrived, the same manager, Susan Carter, greeted him warmly. "Mr. Norris," she said, shaking his hand again. "I can't thank you enough for coming back. Your visit yesterday sparked some important conversations here. We're already working on changes." Chuck nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's good to hear. But I think it's important to lead by example. Sometimes showing people how to act is more powerful than telling them." Susan smiled. "We'd be honored if you'd share your thoughts with the staff today. Many of them are eager to learn from you." With that, Chuck agreed to spend a few hours at the airport, interacting with employees and passengers alike. His goal wasn't just to inspire, it was to demonstrate how small acts of kindness and respect could transform someone's day, and maybe even their life. As Chuck walked through the terminal, people stopped what they were doing to watch him. Some recognized him instantly, whispering excitedly to their companions. Others simply felt drawn to his presence, sensing something special about him. Chuck moved with purpose, stopping occasionally to help passengers or chat with employees. At one point, he noticed a young mother struggling to carry 2 heavy suitcases while holding her toddler's hand. Without hesitation, Chuck stepped forward. "Let me give you a hand," he said gently. Before she could respond, he lifted both bags as if they weighed nothing and carried them to the check-in counter. The woman stared in amazement, then thanked him profusely. "It's no trouble at all," Chuck replied with a smile. "Traveling can be tough, especially with little ones. Let me know if you need anything else." Nearby, Roger watched the scene unfold. He had been avoiding Chuck since their earlier encounter, unsure of how to face him, but now seeing Chuck in action made him realize just how much he still had to learn. Chuck didn't just talk about compassion, he lived it. Every gesture, every word, came from a place of genuine care. Later, Chuck found himself near Gate 17, where a heated argument between 2 travelers was disrupting the boarding process. One man accused the other of cutting in line, and voices were rising fast. Passengers looked uncomfortable, unsure whether to intervene or stay out of it. Chuck stepped closer, his calm demeanor immediately drawing attention. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. "It sounds like there's been a misunderstanding. Why don't we sort this out together?" Both men paused, surprised by his interruption. They glanced at each other, then at Chuck before nodding reluctantly. With a few simple questions, Chuck clarified the situation. The second man hadn't realized the first was saving a spot for his wife, who was delayed at security. Once the truth came to light, the tension dissolved and both men apologized for overreacting. "You never know what someone else is going through," Chuck reminded them. Patience and understanding go a long way. By the end of the day, stories of Chuck's kindness spread throughout the airport. Employees whispered about how he had helped an elderly couple find their gate after their flight was changed unexpectedly. Passengers recounted how he had diffused another conflict between a frustrated traveler and a harried gate agent. Even Roger, who had initially resisted change, couldn't deny the impact Chuck was having. During a brief break, Susan invited Chuck to speak with a group of new hires undergoing training. She introduced him as a role model for the kind of service they should strive to provide. Chuck stood before the group, his posture relaxed but commanding. "I'm not here to tell you how to do your jobs," he began. "You already know the rules and procedures. What I want to talk about is something deeper, the heart behind what you do. Every person who walks through these doors has a story. Some are traveling for joy, others for sorrow. Your job isn't just to check tickets or direct them to gates, it's to make their journey smoother, easier, and maybe even brighter. He paused, letting his words sink in. When you treat someone with respect, you remind them that they matter. That's a gift you can give every single day. It doesn't take much, just a smile, a kind word, or a willingness to listen. Those small things add up. The trainees listened intently, many taking notes. One young woman raised her hand. But what if someone is rude or difficult? How do we handle that? Chuck nodded, acknowledging the challenge. Not everyone will be easy to deal with. Some people are tired, stressed, or upset about things outside your control. That's when patience becomes most important. Instead of reacting to anger with anger, try to understand where they're coming from. Often all they need is someone to listen without judgment. His answer earned nods of agreement. Another employee asked, "Do you ever get frustrated?" "How do you stay so calm?" Chuck chuckled softly. "Of course I get frustrated sometimes, nobody's perfect, but I've learned that staying calm helps me think clearly and respond better. It's not always easy, but it's worth it." After the session, Chuck spent time mingling with the staff, answering questions and sharing anecdotes from his own life. He told stories of times when he had faced challenges and how empathy had helped him overcome them. By the end of the day, even the skeptics were won over. Roger, however, remained quiet during most of the interactions. He admired Chuck's wisdom but still felt guilty about his behavior toward Lily. Finally, after everyone else had left, he approached Chuck hesitantly. "Mr. Norris," he began, his voice trembling slightly. I wanted to say thank you, again, for everything. You've shown us a better way to do our jobs, and I'll never forget that." Chuck placed a reassuring hand on Roger's shoulder. "You're welcome, son. Remember, growth takes time. Just keep moving forward, and you'll see the difference you can make." Encouraged by Chuck's words, Roger decided to take the initiative. Over the next few weeks, he became known for his improved attitude and dedication to helping passengers. He started mentoring newer employees, teaching them the importance of empathy and professionalism. Slowly but surely, he earned back the trust of his coworkers and supervisors. Meanwhile, Lily prepared for her big interview in New York. Thanks to Chuck's efforts, she had arrived on time and was ready to impress. As she rehearsed her answers in front of the mirror, she thought about everything that had happened. Her grandfather's actions had not only fixed her immediate problem, but also inspired countless others to rethink their approach to customer service. And back in Texas, Chuck settled into his routine once more. Though he enjoyed his quiet life, he knew that his visit to the airport had sparked something meaningful. Letters and emails poured in from employees and passengers alike, thanking him for his influence. Each note reinforced his belief that true strength lay in making the world a better place. One evening, as he sat on his porch watching the sunset, Chuck reflected on the events of the past few days. He felt proud, not of himself, but of the people who had embraced his message and carried it forward. They were the real heroes, proving that kindness could ripple outward and touch lives in ways no one expected. And somewhere in the distance, a plane soared across the horizon, carrying passengers whose journeys had been made just a little bit brighter thanks to a lesson learned from Chuck Norris. Lily Thompson stepped out of the taxi and onto the busy streets of Manhattan. The city buzzed around her, honking horns, chatter from passers-by, and the hum of life moving at full speed. But none of that distracted her. Today was the day she had been preparing for, her big job interview. She took a deep breath, adjusted her blazer, and headed toward the towering office building where her future might change forever. As she walked through the revolving doors, Lily couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led her here. From the chaos at the airport to her grandfather's intervention, it felt like fate had pushed her to this moment. She remembered how Chuck Norris hadn't just fixed her travel plans. He had reminded her of the importance of resilience and kindness. Those lessons stayed with her as she prepared for this opportunity. Inside the lobby, Lily checked in with security and made her way to the elevator. Her heart raced as the numbers ticked upward, each floor bringing her closer to the company's headquarters. When the doors opened, she was greeted by a receptionist who smiled warmly. "Welcome, Ms. Thompson," the woman said. "They're ready for you. Please follow me." Lily nodded, trying to steady her nerves. She followed the receptionist down a hallway lined with glass walls, giving glimpses into modern offices filled with focused employees. Finally, they reached a conference room. Inside, 3 people sat around a large table, their expressions neutral but inviting. "Good morning, Lily," one of them said, standing up to shake her hand. "Thank you for coming today. We're excited to learn more about you." The interview began, and Lily quickly found her rhythm. She answered questions thoughtfully, drawing on her experiences and skills to highlight why she was the best fit for the role. When asked about a challenge she had overcome, she shared the story of her disrupted flight and how it taught her the value of staying calm under pressure. "I realized that sometimes things don't go as planned," she explained. "But instead of letting frustration take over, I focused on finding solutions. My grandfather always says that true strength comes from making the world around you better, even when it feels impossible." Her honesty and positivity impressed the panel. They nodded approvingly, asking follow-up questions that showed their interest in her perspective. By the end of the hour, Lily felt confident she had given her all. As she left the building, she allowed herself a small smile. No matter the outcome, she knew she had done her best. Back at the airport where it all began, changes continued to unfold. The airline had officially launched its new initiative, the Norris Standard, named in honor of Chuck Norris's visit. Posters featuring his image appeared throughout terminals, accompanied by quotes emphasizing empathy, respect, and professionalism. Employees received training sessions focused on improving customer interactions, and feedback forms were distributed to gauge passenger satisfaction. Roger became one of the program's biggest advocates. He embraced his role as a mentor, sharing stories of his own transformation with newer staff members. During one session, he recounted his initial encounter with Chuck and how it had changed his outlook. "At first, I thought being strict meant being effective," Roger admitted. "But Mr. Norris showed me that real effectiveness comes from understanding people. Since then, I've tried to approach every situation with patience and care. It's made a huge difference, not just for passengers but for me too." His words resonated with the group, many of whom had witnessed Roger's growth firsthand. One trainee raised her hand and asked, "How do you stay motivated when things get tough?" Roger smiled. "It's not always easy. There are days when I feel frustrated or overwhelmed, but I remind myself of the impact we can have. Even something as simple as a smile or a kind word can turn someone's day around. That's what keeps me going." Across the country, other airlines began taking notice of the changes happening within this particular company. Articles appeared in industry magazines praising the Norris Standard as a model for improving customer service. Competitors started adopting similar practices, inspired by the ripple effect created by one man's actions. For Chuck Norris, the attention was unexpected but welcome. Letters poured in from passengers thanking him for inspiring the improvements they experienced during their travels. Employees wrote to express gratitude for the lessons they had learned and how those lessons had shaped their careers. Chuck read each note carefully, touched by the widespread impact of what had started as a personal mission to help his granddaughter. One evening, as he sat on his porch watching the sunset, Chuck received a call from Lily. Her voice brimmed with excitement. "Grandpa, I got the job," she exclaimed. "They called me earlier today and offered me the position. I start next week." Chuck grinned, pride swelling in his chest. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. You earned it. I'm so proud of you." "Thank you," Lily replied. "None of this would have happened without you. You didn't just fix my ticket. You reminded me of what really matters. I'll never forget that." "You already knew those things deep down," Chuck said gently. "I just helped bring them to the surface. Now go show them what you're capable of." After hanging up, Chuck leaned back in his chair, feeling content. His visit to the airport had sparked something far greater than he could have imagined. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about creating a culture of compassion that extended beyond one person or one place. In New York, Lily celebrated her success with friends over dinner. As they toasted to her achievement, she shared the story of her journey, including her grandfather's heroics. Her friends laughed and marveled at how even someone like Chuck Norris could make such a profound impact in the modern world. "He's incredible," one friend said. "Not just because of who he is, but because of how he treats people. That's what makes him a legend." Lily nodded, raising her glass. "Here's to kindness conquering all." Meanwhile, back at the airport, Roger stood near Gate 17 watching. Passengers board their flights. He no longer saw them as numbers or names on tickets. He saw individuals with stories, hopes, and dreams. Every interaction became an opportunity to make a difference, no matter how small. As the sun set over the tarmac, casting a golden glow across the plains, Roger whispered to himself, "Thank you, Mr. Norris." Then, with a renewed sense of purpose, he turned to assist the next traveler waiting in line. Months passed since Lily's successful job interview, and life settled into a new rhythm for everyone involved. In New York, Lily thrived in her new role. Her colleagues admired her dedication and positive attitude, qualities she credited to the lessons she had learned during her chaotic journey. Each day brought new challenges, but she faced them head-on, remembering her grandfather's advice about resilience and compassion. At the airport where it all began, the Norris standard continued to flourish. Employees embraced the initiative wholeheartedly, transforming the way they interacted with passengers. Smiles became more frequent, conflicts less common, and customer satisfaction soared. The airline earned praise from travelers and industry experts alike, proving that even small changes could have a big impact. Roger was no longer the same man who had torn up Lily's ticket months earlier. His transformation had been profound, both personally and professionally. Once rigid and rule-bound, he now approached every situation with empathy and understanding. He took pride in mentoring younger employees, teaching them not just the technical aspects of their jobs, but also the importance of treating people with kindness. One evening, after a long shift, Roger sat in the break room reflecting on how far he'd come. He remembered the first time he met Chuck Norris, the mix of fear and awe he felt when the legendary figure stood before him. At the time, he hadn't understood why someone like Chuck would care so much about a single passenger. But now he realized it wasn't just about Lily. It was about setting an example for everyone around him. Roger decided to write Chuck a letter expressing his gratitude. Sitting down with pen and paper, he thought carefully about what to say. When he finally began writing, the words flowed easily. "Dear Mr. Norris, I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to thank you again for everything you've done, not just for me, but for everyone here at the airport. Meeting you changed my perspective in ways I never expected. Before, I thought following rules meant being strict and unyielding. Now I know that true strength comes from understanding others and showing compassion. Every day I try to live up to the example you set, helping passengers, mentoring coworkers, and finding joy in the little things. It's all because of you. I'll never forget the lessons you taught us, and I promise to keep sharing them with anyone willing to listen. Thank you for reminding me that kindness conquers all. Sincerely, Roger." When Chuck received the letter weeks later, he read it with a smile. It wasn't the first note of thanks he'd gotten, but it touched him deeply. Roger's words reminded him of why he had stepped in to help Lily in the first place, to inspire change, however small. He tucked the letter away with others, feeling grateful for the ripple effects of his actions. Meanwhile, Lily wrote her own letter to Chuck, updating him on her progress in New York. She described her successes at work, the friendships she had formed, and the confidence she had gained. Enclosed with the letter was a photograph of her standing proudly outside her new office building, a symbol of how far she had come. "Dear Grandpa, I can't thank you enough for everything you did for me. Your support made all the difference, not just in getting me to New York, but in helping me believe in myself. Because of you, I landed my dream job and started a new chapter of my life." Enclosed is a picture of me in front of my office building. Every time I walk through those doors, I think about the lessons you taught me. To stay calm under pressure, to treat others with kindness, and to never give up. You've always been my hero, and I hope to make you proud every single day. Love. Lily. Chuck read the letter several times, his heart swelling with pride. He placed the photo on his mantle next to other cherished mementos, a constant reminder of the legacy he hoped to leave behind. Though he preferred a quiet life away from the spotlight, he knew his actions had inspired countless others to be better versions of themselves. Back in Texas, Chuck spent his days enjoying the simplicity of ranch life. He tended to his horses, practiced martial arts, and watched sunsets from his porch. Despite his retirement from public life, his influence remained strong. People often reached out to share stories of how his example had impacted their lives, whether directly or indirectly. One afternoon, as Chuck rocked gently in his chair, he noticed the small plaque hanging on the wall of his porch. It bore the inscription, "Kindness conquers all." He had put it there months ago as a reminder of the values he held dear. Now as he gazed at it, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He thought about Lily, thriving in her new career, and Roger, turning his life around to become a mentor and leader. He thought about the airline staff who had embraced the Norris standard, spreading kindness to passengers across the country. And he thought about the countless strangers whose journeys had been brightened by the efforts of those inspired by his visit. Chuck realized that his legacy wasn't defined by fame or accomplishments. It was shaped by the moments when he chose to act with compassion and integrity. Those choices had created ripples that extended far beyond what he could see or measure. They reminded him that true strength lay not in physical prowess but in making the world a better place. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Chuck leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He felt content knowing that his actions had sparked something meaningful. Whether through grand gestures or small acts of kindness, he had shown others what was possible when they led with their hearts. Far away in New York, Lily ended another fulfilling day at work. As she walked home through the bustling streets of Manhattan, she thought about her grandfather and the lessons he had taught her. She smiled, knowing that his influence lived on, not just in her life, but in the lives of everyone he had touched. And somewhere in between, Roger boarded a plane, bound for Texas. For months he had wanted to visit Chuck Norris personally, to thank him face to face for changing his life. Now, armed with a suitcase and a heart full of gratitude, he prepared to meet the man who had inspired so much good. As the plane soared into the sky, Roger looked out the window, watching the clouds drift past. He felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain. Kindness truly did conquer all. Roger stepped off the plane in Texas, feeling both nervous and excited. He had spent months wanting to meet Chuck Norris in person, but now that he was here, he wasn't sure what to say. How could he possibly express everything he felt? Still, he knew this visit was important, not just for himself, but as a way of showing gratitude for the impact Chuck had made on his life. After renting a car, Roger drove toward Chuck's ranch, following the directions he'd been given. As he approached the property, he couldn't help but admire its simplicity. The ranch was nestled among rolling hills and open fields, a place where time seemed to slow down. When he pulled up to the house, Chuck was already waiting on the porch, seated in his favorite rocking chair. "Well, look who's here," Chuck said warmly, standing up to greet him. "Roger, right? It's good to see you." "Mr. Norris," Roger replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Thank you for letting me come. I wanted to thank you in person for everything you've done." Chuck gestured for him to sit down. "No need to thank me, son. But I'm glad you're here. Tell me how things are going." For the next hour, Roger shared his story. He talked about the changes he had made at work, the lessons he had learned, and the satisfaction he felt helping others. He admitted that it hadn't always been easy. There were days when old habits crept back in. But overall, he was proud of the progress he had made. "I used to think being tough meant sticking to the rules no matter what," Roger explained. "But you showed me that true strength comes from understanding people and treating them with respect. That's something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life." Chuck listened intently, nodding occasionally. When Roger finished speaking, Chuck smiled. "You've done more than I ever expected, Roger. You didn't just change yourself. You inspired others to do the same. That's real leadership." Roger felt a lump form in his throat. "I owe it all to you. If you hadn't stepped in that day, I don't know if I would have realized any of this." Chuck waved a hand dismissively. "You give me too much credit. All I did was plant a seed. It was up to you to let it grow." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun dip lower in the sky. The air was cool and calm, filled with the sounds of nature. Roger glanced around, taking in the peaceful surroundings. This was a far cry from the busy airport terminals he was used to, yet it felt strangely familiar, as if the lessons Chuck lived by were universal, transcending place and circumstance. Eventually, their conversation turned to Lily. Chuck spoke fondly of his granddaughter, sharing stories of her childhood and how proud he was of the woman she had become. "She's got a big heart," he said, "and she reminds me every day that kindness is the strongest force we have." Roger nodded. "She's lucky to have you as a grandfather. From what I've seen, you've shaped her into someone who can handle anything life throws her way." Chuck chuckled softly. "Let's just say we've learned from each other over the years. She keeps me grounded, and I try to remind her of what really matters." As the evening wore on, Roger realized it was time to leave. Standing up, he extended his hand once more. "Thank you again, Mr. Norris. For everything. I'll never forget this." Chuck shook his hand firmly, then pulled him into a brief hug. "Take care of yourself, Roger, and keep spreading that kindness. It'll take you farther than you think." Driving away from the ranch, Roger felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. He knew this visit marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Back at the airport, he continued mentoring employees and advocating for compassionate service. His co-workers often joked that he was the Norris standard personified, a title he wore with pride. Meanwhile, Lily settled deeper into her role in New York. Her success wasn't just professional, it was personal. She carried the lessons she had learned everywhere she went, using them to navigate challenges and build relationships. Whether negotiating deals or simply chatting with colleagues, she embodied the values her grandfather had instilled in her. One day, during a team meeting, her manager praised her for her ability to stay calm under pressure. "Lily," he said, "you have a gift for making tough situations seem manageable. Where does that come from?" Lily smiled. "It comes from my grandpa. He taught me that staying calm isn't just about controlling your emotions. It's about choosing how you respond to the world around you." Her words resonated with her teammates, sparking conversations about resilience and empathy. Slowly, but surely, Lily became a source of inspiration within her company, much like her grandfather had been at the airport. Back in Texas, Chuck returned to his quiet life, content in the knowledge that his actions had created lasting change. Letters and emails still arrived regularly, thanking him for his influence. Each message reinforced his belief that kindness had the power to transform lives. One evening, as he rocked gently on his porch, Chuck reflected on everything that had happened. He thought about Lily thriving in her career, and Roger turning his life around to become a mentor and leader. He thought about the airline staff who had embraced the Norris standard, spreading compassion to passengers across the country. And he thought about the countless strangers whose journeys had been brightened by the efforts of those inspired by his visit. Chuck realized that his legacy wasn't defined by fame or accomplishments. It was shaped by the moments when he chose to act with compassion and integrity. Those choices had created ripples that extended far beyond what he could see or measure. They reminded him that true strength lay not in physical prowess, but in making the world a better place. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Chuck leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He felt content knowing that his actions had sparked something meaningful. Whether through grand gestures or small acts of kindness, he had shown others what was possible when they led with their hearts. Far away in New York, Lily ended another fulfilling day at work. As she walked home through the bustling streets of Manhattan, she thought about her grandfather and the lessons he had taught her. She smiled, knowing that his influence lived on, not just in her life, but in the lives of everyone he had touched. And somewhere in between, Roger boarded a plane, bound for Texas. For months he had wanted to visit Chuck Norris personally, to thank him face to face for changing his life. Now armed with a suitcase and a heart full of gratitude, he prepared to meet the man who had inspired so much good. As the plane soared into the sky, Roger looked out the window, watching the clouds drift past. He felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain: kindness truly did conquer all.